Survivor specialist Phil and Alexa are back, and the Survivor Ghost Island premiere is in the bag. And this is the last time I'll ever let Alexa convince me that somebody I'm ranking too low as Gonzalez. The Stephanie that I thought would go earlier ends up being the first boot of the game, followed by Jacob, who we were both kind of high on. Alexa, how's your fantasy team doing? Joe Mena 2, Alexa 2 out. So I'm sure that we'll hear about that. But
I knew the minute that we concluded that Twitter poll, and first of all, I lost to Joe in the Twitter poll, which is more insulting than the fact that I lost 2 of my own fantasy players tonight. But I got the second most votes. But out of the 3 people actually had fantasy teams, people thought mine was the best, which was the death sentence. That's why Gonzalez and Jacob are home tonight. I can't win. I need people to not have confidence in me. And as someone who just recorded a lot of boot lists, you guys need to stop listening to me with boot lists. Because I had Desi, everyone had Desi last season. I had Gonzalez. Every boot list is destroyed right now, and it's awesome. It's a great way to start.
Yeah, there's a lot tonight of Alexa and my pregame predictions just going wrong. There was some stuff that we were really good with, but the one thing that we were really wrong on is we were just so convinced Naviti was losing these first challenges. Oh my God! I mean, I want to talk about the second challenge more than the first one. And really, the reason for the second one is I just want to know what happened to James. Like, is James just not a good swimmer? I mean, here's a guy who is a Division I athlete in a very aerobic sport, and then on top of that, he goes to school in a coastal city. Like, you would think that there's some swimming going on here, and he couldn't go down 3 feet. I mean, he couldn't get down at all, and it really shocked me because why would he then go into that position? Just have Brendan do it, or have Michael do, or Michael had already gone, but just have Brendan do it then, or I mean, at that point, Jacob might have been able to go down further. I mean, I know Stephanie Johnson could have done it because at the end, she easily just swam right through the course. It can't just be exhaustion this early. He's only been there for 6 days, and nobody's really talking about, oh, I'm starving. I was just really surprised that it took him so long to do it, and it ultimately cost them the challenge.
Yeah, I think my take on that is I think it was an in the moment thing. I'm swimming is beyond not something I'm good at. I'm much more of a runner or like a climber. And they kept cutting to him like treading water and like thinking about it and then going back down. And I've been in obviously the exact same position as him, but trying to dive down 8 feet and just having no leverage, nothing to push down off of, 1, that's difficult, and 2, probably not the motion of drowning, but the thought of like this water kind of lapping at you. I'm not justifying it, but I think I understand the fear. I understand maybe the mental block of getting there, but at that point, like you said, someone else should be doing that. You shouldn't have volunteered for it. He should know that he's not good at that. And then
and not for nothing,
from Eastern Kentucky comes and saves the day. Big quotes on saves the day. But.
Yeah, he's the hero. A hero emerges, as Jeff says, and I love Donathan tonight. But we'll talk about that. What I want to say is, well, for me, the whole going underwater in the ocean, for me, like going down that deep, that would be hard for me. But as soon as Jeff said it was 8 feet, that's the deep end of a standard swimming pool. Everybody can touch the bottom of a standard swimming pool. Like really, like I'm sure like most people who have either been in a pool or been near a pool can touch the bottom of a swimming pool. And that's why you've seen some of these challenges. I mean, in the early seasons, they're dragging the treasure chests and it looks like they're 15 feet down. They might even be more than that. So for 8 feet, it's really not all that bad. And I really do think that James might have I think he really had a panic attack in the water, and that's what ended up doing him in. Because for Donathan to be able to just dive in and get it pretty quickly, as much as Donathan didn't want to do it, he was still able to do it pretty easily. And I think James really did have a panic attack more than anything.
Yeah, I definitely think it was a mental thing because it is hard. Like I said earlier, it is hard to just like go straight down. But when it is only 8 feet, you can kind of propel yourself. And he's a muscular guy. Like he's a strong guy. I think it was definitely a mental thing. And then, we cut from James with his, they keep cutting to him with those big goggles on. And then we have our Suri hero music when Donathan jumps in. I mean, I'm curious if he actually did it on the first try. I know that they kind of edited it that way. I'm curious if he actually did. If either way, good for him. He
had plenty of time to sit there and catch his breath.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he was like sunbathing up there. But in the end, it didn't even matter because they lost back-to-back challenges and they won the opening challenge. We'll give ourselves that. Past that, they have won just about nothing.
Well, and this is always the thing on this show is whoever loses the first challenge almost always loses the second challenge. It's very rare, especially in these big tribe seasons, that the team that loses the first challenge goes on to win the next challenge. And I'm sure somebody's going to pull up a statistic that proves me wrong, but I think that if you watch the show, when they lost the first challenge, I sat there and said they're losing the next one too. There's no way Naviti's losing to this tribe. Like, it's just not going to happen. And I was very, very confident in that. Like, I knew that the next person going home was going to be Jacob, or it was going to be somebody else who blew it. Maybe Donathan or somebody who just blew a challenge. And that's when I was like, oh, maybe it's James. So you knew it wasn't going to be Libby. We literally heard nothing from Libby. And if you're going to give it, what they did with Jacob kind of makes sense here. They give him a huge episode. He ended up with the most confessionals in the premiere. Yeah. He had 14 episodes tonight.
It was a good 2-episode arc. It was excellently paced and edited for him.
Yeah, exactly. It was excellently paced and edited for him. We need to specify that because we're going to talk about my boy Bradley having nothing. And I got Brad. I mean, I'm thinking he's going to be firing off like gold. Where was he?
We've got a laundry list of people who we got nothing from.
I know. And 2 of them were the people we thought were going to be the first 2 boots, and they didn't even get anything. I don't know. Were they even on the island tonight? Maybe it is 8-8, and for all we know. But the big thing here is Jacob gets this huge edit. He's a big character. You know he's going to get that type of edit, like no matter how long he's out there. He's doing a lot of stuff. We'll talk about his actual game moves and what ended up doing him in. But he got this really big arc because when you have somebody who's that big of a personality who goes that early, you're going to get everything you can out of him. It's like when Zeke went, or Zane went back in Philippines. Like, you got to get as much as you can out of it. This isn't a Katrina who goes, and no, nothing against Katrina, but she's no Jacob. And even whether you love Jacob or you didn't in this episode, there's plenty of things he did. Yeah, he's a fun second boot. There's plenty of things he did on this season in just 2 hours that we might not even see people who go on to get 6th, 7th, 8th place do in this season. So I'm okay with him getting the huge edit. I'm kind of, if you're going to give somebody that big of an edit, I'm almost happy that he's gone, because it's like I feel like I got as much Jacob as you're going to get in like those 2 episodes. I feel like it was going to be the same thing a lot. I feel like he had some game to play, but I feel like this was a good beginning, middle, and end for the guy. And I know it's probably eating him alive, but he did a lot. He didn't go down without a fight. That's for sure. So.
Yeah, his last words were heartbreaking. I mean, his last words were of someone who like has applied their entire life, has been a fan of this show, and then for it to just not happen. I mean, that must be heartbreaking. But to your point, just to add on to that, he was such a good person to have as your first trip to Ghost Island, because he knew all that stuff. He was walking us through. He's like, oh my God, these are the snuffers. He hit the urn and actually got a game of chance, which obviously I'm sure they planned, but that would have been a huge dud if he goes there. They're like, nothing for you, go home. And he plays the game of chance. Like, he does everything so well. He knows the legacy advantage, gives it to Morgan, and we'll talk about the whole Morgan dynamic, because that's going to get really good. Even with him gone, because Stephanie Johnson knows that she has it. She obviously doesn't know that Stephanie knows. He was a great vessel for us to go through to learn about Ghost Island. I really feel like that worked out as well as it could as an introduction to Ghost Island. And I loved that, we can break down the island more, but I loved that sometimes it's not really anything, because I didn't want people to just come in and just get mass produced advantages. Sometimes you just have to hang out and eat some rice. It was great.
My whole question is, if he decides he's not going to play the game to keep his vote and not even chance it, do they then have Donathan go for the legacy advantage, or is the legacy advantage just out of play? What do you think? Did Jeff ever have like an interview? I'm sure that's probably going to be one of Dalton Ross's questions, but.
Oh, so you're asking if so let's say Jacob hits it, he sees the game of chance and says, no thanks, walks away. Does Donathan get it?
Well, does Donathan get the game of chance, or is the legacy advantage just gone? And when Donathan goes and cracks the urn, it still says no game for you, and that's it for Donathan.
He's got to get the game of chance. They can't have that. I would think, yeah, because they're not going to have that floating around.
They want the legacy advantage to be in the game. That's why they made it the first thing. And the legacy advantage
is like, man, that thing is like bad luck.
Well, here's the good news: Morgan cannot be the Haley, the Jessica. So it won't be Morgan this year, guys. It won't be Morgan. She's got that at 13 no matter what. So she
heard it here first.
Not going to be Morgan, which is a good thing for her. But I agree with you. I actually was a big fan of Ghost Island, and going into it, I didn't really read much on Ghost Island, which I guess is a bad thing to say considering I do this like every week and I'm supposed to like know what I'm talking about. But I didn't really read much on Ghost Island, and I'm kind of happy I didn't because I think it would have just confused me. Even the whole concept of it kind of confused me. And like just trying to hear like other people explain it confused me. So to sit there and watch it, I did like to see, like you said, Jacob is the perfect person for this. He's a huge fan. He's so excited to be there. And I'm sure he's leaving there going, okay, these are, even in my 6 days, at least I got that. But to have them go there and you crack the urn and then you're given a choice. And then the next person goes and they might not be given anything. And then the next person might not take the chance because they don't want to lose their vote. If somebody like Brendan goes, I doubt he's cracking the urn, because he probably is playing a safer game than somebody like Jacob, somebody like Dominic, somebody like Donathan, who feels like he's on the bottom. You get a Brendan, you get maybe a Wendell. I don't know if they're necessarily cracking the urn. So I do like that there's a lot to it. And I like the fact that it saves somebody from tribal. I don't necessarily think that this should be done every time, but I do like when they mix it up and you do have the opportunity for the other tribe to say, you know what, you're safe. Because as much as it screwed a season like Panama, they weren't going to do anything anyway. Sally, whether Sally goes or Dan goes, it's still screwing that season. But you know, that's where my incombustible theory comes in. But the incombustible theory. But I do like this whole idea. And out of everything wrong Jacob did tonight, he was right in knowing that he was going to go home and he needed to get to Ghost Island. And he did it perfectly to get there. And then he rubbed their faces in it and expected them to do it to him again. And it wasn't going to happen. He ended up hurting himself because once they sent him, he rubbed it in. And they were like, screw this guy. We're not sending him again. And he really thought they were going to send him again. That was his plan. And I think if he would have kept his mouth shut after he went, he probably goes the second time.
Yeah, well, that was the thing. Like he ran his mouth and they were like, okay, we'll send him, which is great execution. They were going to do it. He wanted them to do it. It was perfect. But then when they didn't pick him, when they picked Donathan the second time, he just audibly like throws his head back and groans. And I was like, you are already so on the outs. You cannot be begging for that as your only chance of immunity. And we got the fake idol thing. Like there were a lot of issues in his game. But to me, the one that stood out the most was him throwing his head back and saying, oh, crap.
I kind of agree with you on that. But I do think that I'm saying after the first one, when he made his whole speech, I thought it was a really good speech to ensure that they're like, this guy's confident. He thinks they got this great tribe. Screw him. We're sending him, because he made himself feel like he wasn't at the bottom. He convinced the other tribe he wasn't on the bottom. And they said, he's talking all that crap. Let's get rid of him. That was a great move by him because he would have gone home first. That was a great move by him.
Yeah, he screwed Gonzalez with that.
Screw Gonzalez. Gonzalez does not go home there, and I think Gonzalez has a chance to really redeem herself and get on people's good sides if Jacob doesn't do that. But where he screwed himself is once they did it, he goes, well, that was my plan all along. That's what I did. And you're like, why are you? Don't rub their face in it. And then you expect them to put you again. And he said, and we're going to send him again. And then they didn't send him. Like he said that with his whole tribe there. Like,
yeah, it was frustrating. And then, I mean, we can go back because it was kind of funny. Like I definitely enjoyed watching him. Like you said, like we got so much out of him, and I'm glad that we did. But he starts off with the rice and socks, and I was like, this is Max sticking his warty feet in the pot of water. There's just nothing good that comes of here. And then, I mean, again, they're editing this however they see fit. But for him to say, I'm going to go exploring on day 1 or 2, no one goes exploring on day 1 or 2 without like 17 of their closest friends. It was just, I wanted him to fix it, but it just kept going downhill and downhill. And then the fake idol without the wrapping, that to me, that was the nail in the coffin, because at this point, everyone uses the wrapping. Dr. Mike used it. Everybody uses the note from a real idol. And for him to say, I think I left it at Ghost Island, that I don't know. It was just a bad sell. It was like, no, you're a huge fan. You didn't just leave it there.
And that's exactly what Brendan said. He goes, there's no way a fan like Jacob is going to forget to bring that. I mean, Jacob should be putting that on a mantelpiece. Like, there's no way he's just going to forget.
Like, I'm taking the thing home.
Yeah, like there's no way. And he shot himself in the foot a bunch of times tonight. This is a case though of when you get people on the show who in their life are more insecure, very neurotic. Like he said, I'm so neurotic, I have to tell myself this is a great tribe. Like he had to tell himself that. But this is what happens once you get onto the show. it's like what happened with David, except David was able to use somebody to go before him, and then they won the next challenge. So he was okay. And people kept on piling up as worse than him. You had Paul going down. You had Lucy just doing her Lucy thing, Cece doing her Cece thing. It was just like they kept David around. Jacob was playing that same game where he was just overplaying so much. And it ended up biting him. I mean, I think honestly, putting the rice in the sock is gross, but at the same time, he knew that there, but he knew there could be a clue in there, and I don't blame him.
Yeah, no,
it happens all the time.
Yeah, I was actually kind of waiting for something to pop out. I was surprised it didn't. And also, that is no rice. They're getting nothing.
Yeah, I know, and we got to talk. I mean, we've kind of talked about Jacob.
Yeah, why don't we go chronologically?
Let's go back to the beginning here. And first of all, what I want to say is 20 people is too much. I still think 20 people is too much. I'm glad that we lose 2 in the first episode because now we have 18 and 20. It just makes it so hard, especially when it's 2 tribes, because we didn't get to hear from 3 people on Naviti, and we didn't get to really hear from Libby except for her one little thing at the end there when Jeff asked her a question at Tribal. And what I didn't like about this intro, and I like the challenge, and we'll talk about the challenge, but what I didn't like about this intro is in recent seasons, what they've done in the intro is you jump around. Here's a quick snippet from this person, quick snippet from this person as they're riding in, quick snippet. Instead, on this season, we had Jeff explaining what Ghost Island was and showing clips of Survivor. And I love watching old clips of Survivor, but on this season, I want to hear from everybody. And we didn't get the jump around where you could have maybe gotten some from Bradley or something from Chelsea or Angela or Libby. You could have gotten these little snippets that we just didn't get. And because of that, it actually made it harder for me to get into that first challenge, because by the time the first challenge was ending, all we had heard from was, I think, Kellen, Dominic, Brendan, Desi, and Chris. Like, that was it. That was all we heard from. And it made it hard because I'd rather hear from do the jump around where we hear from half the cast right away, and then we get into whatever we're getting into.
Yeah, because the jump around, it's all the first impressions, and even though it's not the same marooning because they came in on separate boats, it's still awesome to hear that. Like, you love watching that, even if you don't remember what it is a couple episodes from then. It's like, it's classic Survivor. I loved the intro, but it did take away the time that we could have had with that jumping around. And this is going to be a tough season to balance that, because I called my mom right after the episode, and she was like, I'm confused. There's like 17 different things going on. There's already 7 idols, slight exaggeration. She's like, there's already fake idols, a real idol is an advantage. They're cutting back to old seasons, and then they're spending 10 minutes explaining Ghost Island. This is going to be a season with a lot of, not filler, but not immediate gameplay, because they're going to have to explain a lot of this stuff. And I think that's something we're all going to have to accept.
Yes.
And I'm fine with it, but I do hate that we lost. We did not hear a single confessional from Bradley, Chelsea, Angela, or Laurel. Or no, excuse me, or Libby. We got a Laurel. Yeah, Laurel got a tiny one at the end. And like you said, Libby was involved in this like switcheroo vote that happened. So it is frustrating. I know last year it was like, okay, we didn't hear from Katrina, who went home, but to not hear from 4 people is definitely a little frustrating. Even just a quick something.
It was like season 5 of Lost, where they're like traveling through time. That's what I felt like I was watching tonight, because it was like every time like something came up, like it's like what was that episode, The Variable? Anybody who's a huge Lost fan, you know what I'm talking about, Daniel Faraday. So there's, in that episode, I'm pretty sure you see like people as adults who are also children, and adults and children, and that's what I felt like I was watching when it was like, here's Jacob reading the note, and then it was like, here's Dominic reading the note, and here's Morgan reading the note. Like, it was like, and here's a clip.
It was like a storybook. Like, Jacob's thing took forever.
And that's the one thing I will say is, I'm glad. I like the idea. You know, I wasn't sure I was going to like it, but I did kind of like I mean, I geeked out a little bit when it was like, oh, okay, like here's Jacob, who's a huge fan, who's getting this thing that, to me, like the Sierra Sarah thing isn't that big of a deal because it came in a season that I really didn't like. But like, for him to be sitting there like, this is great, like this is what I have, and now I like, the power isn't with it unless I give it to somebody on another tribe. And Dominic with his Andrea idol that we said we would never recognize, so what does it matter? That's the first one, of course, that comes into the game. I like that they did it. I think that as the season goes on, though, they're going to have to shorten up the narration of it, because it was, Jacob's was long. I mean, that whole Parchment was a novel, and he kept going and telling you what it was. And it was like, just give us the the quick hits, and especially if you're going to flash back to it, we're going to figure it out.
Yeah, exactly. And that's another, like you brought up a good point where you said we're going to figure it out. A lot of people don't have the memory of Survivor history the way that we or a lot of our viewers do. So I think it's really important that we know that this is coming, because they are going to have to explain this to the new viewers that they're trying to bring in. They are going to have to explain this stuff to the people who watched seasons 1 through 4 and then forgot about it until they saw a commercial last week. So I guess the point I'm trying to make is this stuff will be around. It has to be around. I'm okay with it being around, but it can't take up 2 minutes when especially those 2 minutes could have gone to Libby, Bradley, Chelsea, or Angela.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's the biggest thing. And I know they had to introduce Ghost Island. It's almost like Exile Island when Misty was there, and you got a lot from Misty, and then she goes home fourth. Like, but you have to introduce it with somebody, and if that just so happens to be the person, then that just so happens to be the person. And Jacob just happened to be the person who went, and he goes there. You had to give him some screen time there, but we didn't necessarily need him to read the whole thing. We know, I mean, to be honest, that one needed less time than Dominic's, because this one happened 2 seasons ago, and people who watch Survivor and are big fans of Survivor definitely watched Game Changers, because Game Changers had returning players. So like the bigger fans were watching 36, maybe not so much 26, or they don't remember 26 because it was so long ago. It was another lackluster season. I mean, we're just throwing out things from like below average seasons of Survivor. Maybe this is like to reverse the curse of Karamoan and Game Changers more than anything.
Ooh, they're onto something. You're onto something there.
Here
what else?
Go.
Well, there's a San Juan del Sur idol floating around. That was a season. Trying to think what else is floating around. It's all written down. There was who else is? Someone else has an idol. I don't know.
No, nobody else. There's only one idol and an advantage.
Yeah, I meant my words were not working. Yeah, that's a good point. I'm curious what seasons they picked from exactly. There's one from Heroes, Healers, Hustlers, which I'm very curious as to how they're going to sell that.
Yeah, especially since the people won't have actually seen the season. So okay.
Let's get to this challenge.
Completely abandoned season or the beginning. Okay, first of all, I died laughing when Brendan was picked as the leader, because we've been saying that since the first time I saw that man's jawline. I was like, there you go, there's your leader. And sure enough, he gets picked as the leader immediately. Goes right out there. And this just showed, and whether Brendan wins the game or doesn't win the game, if this showed like the position that he was in here, he picked 2 people. I think he picked these people. He picked Michael as the strongest. And I liked, obviously, he's the biggest guy, so I think that's like a no-brainer. Picking the puzzle person is always tough. And I'm curious as to why he went with Laurel, but I like that once he went with it, he said, I'm sticking with it. I don't think he ever even looked at the thing. They had to keep cutting to Chris, because Chris was the only one who was looking over at the thing to pull. And I liked that you had to pull this here, because it added another spice to it. And it instantly made Chris and Dominic enemies. And Chris survived tonight, but I don't see Chris surviving much longer, because it seems like he's battling against the wrong person here. But I did like this opening challenge. I thought it was a cool dynamic. It gave everybody a bunch of sit outs for the prop bet game. But to me, once you're in the position, I remember I was unsure when we were actually talking about it. To me, you never ever pull the plug here, because you're instantly saying, I don't believe that you're going to finish. And Chris didn't back it up well.
Well, that's my thing. So I'm watching that, and I'm like, and they keep cutting to Chris. Like, Brendan's just like letting Laurel do her thing. And I actually, from our account, I retweeted a photo that Dalton Ross posted, which is where Laurel was when Chris pushed it or pulled it. She was like not all there, or she wasn't that far. So there was plenty of time for Des to still figure it out. But here's my thing. My issue is not with Chris pulling the trigger. My issue is with Chris not making it Dez's decision.
Yeah.
So at the bottom line, he should have said, do you want me to do this? If she said no and he pulled it, that could have been worse. But he had to frame it as if it was a team decision or it was her decision to take the heat off his back. But because he didn't say anything and he just yanked it out, and the trigger was right in front of them too. Like, it was a really good setup. So he just yanks it out from under her. I thought that was just terrible. It's one, I have no problem with pulling it, but I have a problem with you not defending or asking the person actually.
Well, and not only that, if you're not going to ask them, you have to defend it. And all he had to do was say, I thought Laurel was going to finish. I was looking at both puzzles. Laurel was really close. Des wasn't close. He didn't say that, though. He just like walked away and was like, I wanted to take whatever we could take. And it's like, wait, you can't just say that, because what if Des was one slide piece away? Like, tell your tribe what you saw.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, at least for Des, she had her redemption by bawling out in that second immunity challenge.
Yeah,
I mean, she was an
hour and a half.
She was never her problem. She was doing her job perfectly fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
and then
exactly.
and then we got the Chris and Dominic little jabbing at each other, and that progressed throughout the rest of the episode.
Yeah, I will say though, Chris is more aware than I thought he was going to be, because when Dominic was giving him the whole pitch about the idol and, you know, I'd like to work with you and let's put our differences aside, Chris was onto him. And even with the paper all wrapped around, he was like, I don't trust this guy. And that's good, because a lot of people might just say, oh, this person wants to work with me. I mean, look what Stephanie Johnson did to Jacobson. I mean, that was textbook.
Masterful. Yeah,
that was incredible. I mean, I think Stephanie Johnson's MVP. Is she on my team or is she on Vaughn's?
She's on your team. You got her.
Did I? I think Vaughn got her.
Really? Oh, he might have.
I think he snuck her in right before I could pick her.
Oh, you're right. Vaughn does have Stephanie.
I got to pull that up.
But yeah, to further your point about Chris, like I loved Dominic tonight. He was awesome. Loved the accent. Loved him saying he didn't want to be involved with building a shelter in the preseason, and then just crushes the entire shelter. It looked awesome. And then he was great. I mean, he got an idol. He had an awesome episode. But the only thing was, his plan with Chris would have worked if Chris wasn't as aware as he is. Because previously, like 10 seconds previously, he told Chris he didn't have an idol. So Chris already has reason not to trust him when he shows him something. And that was the only thing. But I think that might have just been him getting like caught up in the moment of like, I'm totally going to screw this guy. But yeah, they're a duo that I can't wait to keep watching them butt heads. And Chris is like the ultimate, like, I don't even want to call him a villain, just like the bad guy. Like he's a good bad guy.
Yeah. He is. He's a good bad guy, and he is a bad guy. I mean, it's pretty clear right now that it's being set up for him to be the villain in this relationship. I mean, wouldn't stop talking, and he never really got shown in a negative light, which was pretty surprising for a guy who's sitting there talking nonstop, telling them how to build the shelter. He raises his hand, which is a stupid move no matter what. Come on, Dominic. But I guess that's just how he's going to play. But that's just a dumb move to raise your hand and say, I would change it. It's like, don't do that. Don't do that.
Keep your mouth shut.
That's just a bad gameplay move. But it's crazy that whatever he was doing was clearly working. I mean, he was doing what was he doing? Snatches, and like everybody was just like, oh, is that like a power snatch or whatever? Like it was just like, oh, this is like this is what he's doing. Clearly he's fitting in. And it seems like Sebastian is actually the one who's taking the biggest hit because of Chris. It seems like Sebastian's the one where they're like, well, he's not really in our group because he's too busy off with Chris.
Oh my God. How funny was that conversation where Sebastian goes up to Wendell and he's like, yeah, we're voting Chris. And Wendell was like, oh, or no, he was like, we're voting Dominic. And Wendell was like, but I like him. Sorry.
That was so great.
And just like,
it was great.
Ends conversation. It was super funny. Yeah. Well, I guess Sebastian and Chris, they got like the Florida bro thing going on. Like they're both from like nearby in Florida, but that's also another thing. Like, don't suggest someone goes home when you haven't even gone to tribal yet. Like, just kind of play it cool at the beginning.
Sebastian seems like a really good guy. Sebastian doesn't seem like somebody who I think is going to go very far in this game, though. Just because he did very good in that first challenge. It seemed like that took out both Michael and Sebastian. It seemed like that exhausted both of them. But
oh my God, yeah.
It just seems like Sebastian is kind of in over his head in terms of the social game. He can go out there, he can catch fish, he can, do whatever he's got to do. He can win in the challenges. He seems very Ozzy in a time of Survivor when Ozzy doesn't matter. I mean, look what Brendan said. He's like, Brendan was like, I think we've passed the point where a Survivor game is about who has the biggest muscles. And I think them showing tonight, Brendan saying, and this is looking further ahead, but him saying to Michael, I think they're pulling one on us. I think that's showing us some sort of awareness from Brendan, and maybe it's wishful thinking, but I really do think that that's them showing some sort of awareness from him that they want us to know that he has, because it was a thought for them to turn it on Michael. And it was something Jacob brought up, but it was also something Johnson brought up to Jenna. This was things this is what was being brought up. And it seemed like the only ones who were really out of the loop were Michael, Brendan, and Libby. It seemed like the three of them had no idea, but Brendan was the one who kept saying, they could be pulling one on us. They could be pulling one on us. So I think that he's being shown right now where it's like, it's not about strength anymore. It's about this. It's about that. And whether that means he's actually going to win the game, I don't know. But it's saying something about his perception as opposed to Libby or Michael.
Yeah. Okay, I go two different ways here. I think to your point about Brendan having that awareness, I think the three people who had the biggest like shining ball of light end game quotes were definitely Brendan with that, Kellen, and then Donathan too. I mean, Donathan had a huge episode when he was at Ghost Island, just like the whole I'm discovering myself, I'm here to meet new people, I came to play to win. And then Kellen had something too, which I wrote down, but my notes are an absolute mess.
It was at the very beginning.
Yeah, it was pretty early on, but for someone who we had no real reason to see, except for the fact that she crushed that first immunity challenge, like that happened because of her. She was an animal at that. There was kind of no real reason to talk to her, so that's definitely a hint into the future. And then back to the Jacob vote out, Stephanie played him like a fiddle. And unlike the Devin, Ben, Lauren, Ashley situation we had last year, Stephanie said, I'll talk to him. I'll be the secret agent. And she wins him over in a minute, to the point so much that she almost considers working with him. Whether or not she actually seriously considered that was up to her. But she was perfect. She was so smooth. She was so good. And the thing was, she just was still kind of genuine because she did seem to have some kind of affinity towards him. And I'm really glad that Michael didn't go home because he was great tonight. We didn't get a lot of him, but he's someone who I want to stick around for a while because I really want to see where his story develops.
Yeah, and I was probably the hardest on Michael in the preseason because I kept saying 18 seconds, and I really did like Michael tonight. He was probably the one who surprised me the most in terms of like who I thought was going to be lower down in my like just enjoyment of watching them play, and I actually really liked him.
Yeah.
Laurel was good, but we got so little of Laurel. We did get more of Michael. Michael came out. He had the challenge at the beginning. He was a factor in the votes. He had more confessionals. Like his name getting brought up also adds like to his character, I feel like.
Yeah.
Laurel kind of didn't have to have that. And Laurel just kind of maybe surprised me more in the fact that her name didn't come up. I don't know how well of a social game she's playing, though. And that was kind of the whole situation tonight with everybody. I don't really know who's playing a good social game aside from Stephanie Johnson. It seems like everybody believes what Stephanie Johnson is saying.
It's
but
awesome.
But aside from that, like who's playing a good social game? Like Jenna had confessionals, but like where's her head at? Who's her friend? Who's like, it seems like Brendan, Michael, and Libby are all like tight, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're playing well because the three of them aren't really like, are they hitting it off? I don't know.
Yeah, they showed those three in the corner. Jenna had like two confessionals, one of which was like, I don't want to say negative, but she said something that was like, I don't really care who we vote out, but like, I'm with Stephanie. She's like my day one girl. She says this on day 5, which I always think is funny when people say that in the premiere. So I guess Stephanie and Jenna are tight. And then before these vote outs, I'm seeing like Stephanie, Jenna, Libby, and Laurel kind of hanging out. I don't know if Laurel has like a best friend, but yeah, I agree with you. I don't really know where the chips are falling in that group. Because I think for Jacob, it was just such an easy vote for them. And then James, I don't know where James stands either. I have no idea where he is. So yeah, it's weird. Because Gonzalez was 9-1. And the Jacob one was essentially almost unanimous.
Yeah, and I like it was unanimous because they threw the votes on James in case he had the idol.
Yeah.
But with Gonzalez, what was weird is like they threw up the hashtag blindside. I feel like Gonzalez knew that was coming, and unfortunately, Vaughn no longer has to wear the lace shirt anymore, which is a real shame. But I do feel like Gonzalez knew that was coming because she seemed mad, but at the same time, it was just like, you guys really are gonna like keep Donathan over me. Like I think that's more of what it was. But once again, like I don't think Donathan wins this game, but you always have this underdog type character where even if he only makes it to like 13th or 14th place, he's your underdog on this season. It's going to be Donathan for as long as he's in the game. So and I think a lot of people just felt for him more than anything. I think they connected with him better. He might not be the best social player, but I feel like he tried. And I don't think that people felt like Gonzalez maybe tried to make as much of an effort with him.
I actually think it was his quote unquote social game is what saved him because
that's what I mean. Yeah.
Because she like, I guess had just rubbed him the wrong way. I think as soon as we cut to their tribe and she's like talking about how she could have done better or how she could have done well in that puzzle portion, I was like, that's it. Because that's like not really what you say when you get back to your tribe after losing your first challenge. But at least they framed it in a way that said, like, this would have been me. I would have been so great at this. I don't really know if that's actually how it was said, but that's how they framed it. But had Donathan messed up, had he not done what he did in that second immunity challenge, part of me was hoping for that to the point of like, see, you got rid of the strong person for this. But ultimately, I'm okay with how it turned out.
Yeah, and I'm glad that he did that. And really, I think that's the reason why he got sent to Ghost Island is because like that other tribe was like, dude, he just did that. Like, let's make sure he doesn't go home. I mean, we can get in his good graces. And they're probably looking at they're probably looking at him as somebody who's not super confident in himself, and they're saying that could be somebody we could pull over to our side. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you're really looking further down the road, that's a Cochran-esque player where it's like he's never really done this before. Let's see if we can use him, especially if we show him a little like graciousness.
Yeah, so, I'm excited to watch him grow. I'm really excited to see how he plays out.
Yeah, and that's what Donathan I think is going to be. I think he's going to be the growth storyline of this season. I don't think he's necessarily going to be anything really. I don't think he's going to win, but I think he's going to be like the growth here. I'm looking at like who else like we had here, just who like we haven't touched on. I mean, Chelsea and Angela weren't even really in the episode, so you can't really say anything about them. I mean, their tribe won, but it's a shame that like this is what I'm saying. Like on the Naviti tribe, we had Dominic. We had a lot of Dominic, and he got 10 confessionals tonight despite being on the winning tribe. Mm-hmm. And we had so much of him, and we had him versus Chris, and we had Sebastian thrown in. Wendell, we got a little bit from. I really like Morgan. I thought Morgan was really fun tonight.
Morgan was great, yeah. And her teeth are so freaking clean.
I know.
That's like not worth noticing, but that was the first thing I noticed. But yeah, I think she had a good episode.
Yes, Desiree was pretty good, even though we didn't see much of her. Kellen had a really big moment. But like, I know nothing about where anybody on that tribe stands. I know nothing about it. Do who's aligned with who even thinks about, like, at least like when we had the small tribe last season with Dr. Mike and everything, you knew that Joe was gunning for Dr. Mike, and then it turned like the next episode it was like, you know what, I might need that guy though. And that's kind of like what they tried to do here with Dominic and Chris, but it was just so unbelievable that now it ends, and I'm like, well, what about the other 8 people? Who are they siding with? Who do they like?
Yeah, I think the only things that we really, big quotes on know for sure, are Chris and Sebastian and Dominic and Wendell. I feel like they purposely kind of had like the 2 big guns and then their 2 sidekicks, and then had the big guns kind of fake it. I feel like there's going to be some kind of structure there. There's going to be some kind of back and forth with those groups, and then where everyone else falls is obviously to be determined, because past that, I don't even know who's aligned with who. I don't know who Bradley, Des, Morgan, Chelsea, Angela, or Kellen are aligned with. And I guess they don't have to be aligned with anyone yet, but I like Morgan's position, because at least in her tribe, like, she's got this thing that if she wants to use as a way to make friends, she can, or she can build relationships and have this in her back pocket. I think she's in a really good position, because because we have a swap coming up, she might bump into Stephanie sooner than we think.
And I think what actually hurts Morgan in this situation is that Stephanie Johnson knows, and Morgan doesn't know Stephanie Johnson knows. She's thinking Jacob's the only one who knows. So it's up to Stephanie Johnson if she wants to say, hey, I know you have it, or hey, I don't know you have it. It's up to her whether she says that or not. And Morgan has no idea. So Morgan might think, oh, I'm pulling the wool over everybody's eyes, but there's somebody over there who knows. This isn't like the Ryan Chrissy thing, because it's not something that could absolutely save you. This is, you need it for later in the game, and you don't know, the other person who gave it to you is gone. That's all you know for sure.
I think Stephanie's going to Sarah her. I think Stephanie's going to do what Sarah did. Just befriend her and then cut her throat and then get the advantage.
That's what it feels like, especially from what we saw from Stephanie tonight. I mean, Stephanie was really, really good tonight.
She was awesome. Really that the list of names on the legacy advantage thing, they're going to like run out of space for how many people get those names.
I know. I feel like that's I do think Morgan, though, I feel like Morgan's pretty well set up because she's not very threatening.
For sure.
But other than that, like, I don't know. I just didn't get much over there. And then even on the other tribe, though, they would go to tribal twice, and like everybody voted for Gonzalez. So what good does that really do us? And then Jacob was such a big character, and we knew he was going to go. He should have been the first boot. So I still don't even really realize like how tight is Stephanie Johnson with Jenna? How tight is James with anyone? How tight is Jenna with Brendan? Because we saw them walking down the beach together, talking about whatever they were talking about. Like, it's always hard in the first episode, especially like you have 2 hours and there's 20 people. But I mean, I dig the cast. It's just a matter of like,
cast is great.
It's just a matter of like where, like who's actually trying to play with who. I really don't feel like I got much of that tonight because we got so much of the second boot.
I think at least when it comes to Malolo, I think as the two different votes were just two completely different situations. One was, okay, Jacob's not there. Let's get rid of the person who's, I guess, whatever, rubbing us the wrong way. And then second is, okay, now we need to get rid of this guy. But then there's also James who did poorly in the challenge. In terms of Stephanie's relationships, I agree with you. I don't know how Stephanie feels about Jenna, but I know that Jenna's tight with Stephanie because she wouldn't. That's the only we're tight confessional that we heard all night was Jenna saying she's my day one girl on day 5. And I think because that's the only bit that we really got from Jenna, that will mean something moving forward.
At least to her game, even if it means that she gets blindsided by that, it means something to her.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, what else?
I'm trying to think what else. I just have a lot of Chris notes. Oh, I wrote Chris City of Dreams ? Because so they were doing their little introductions and Chris was like, from Florida, live in the City of Dreams. And they're all like, oh, haha. As someone who lives in the City of Dreams, no one calls it the City of Dreams. When he said
that, he was going to say Los Angeles.
No, he lives in New York.
I know, but I thought when he said like the City of Dreams, I just assumed he was going to say like Los Angeles or something because everybody calls the City of Dreams, City of Stars, City of.
Oh, I think you guys are the City of Stars. I thought we have this like.
Well, and City of Angels. I mean, it's they call it everything.
Oh yeah.
It's just like.
Yeah, New York's. I think New York is the City of Dreams, but I think it doesn't matter because no one calls it that. Yeah. So yeah, as soon as he said that, I was like, okay, Chris, nobody calls it that. We need to go. What else do I have? I wrote in all caps, lots of thighs. There were a lot of thighs going on.
Wow. Good eye there, Alexa.
Yeah. Well, usually they wear pants on the first episode. They came in quite hot this episode.
Yes, we're giving Dominic the episode title. I'm looking at I love looking at the comments here on Twitter because it's so funny.
Oh my God, Twitter was losing their mind.
It's just so funny how Jacob. Well, it's what I think is so funny about the comments that are at least at us is how everybody's boot list is so messed up. I find this one to be really, really funny where it's where is it? Oh man, I think I just lost it. I had it here. It was pretty fun. Oh, Garrett Weeding, employer, do you have any regrets in life? Me having Dominic out at 17th on my boot list. I mean, pretty much the people we thought were deep game seem like they're going to be deep game with really aside from Jacob, who I think we both had kind of high on our boot list, but neither of us had him winning. So
yeah, for sure. Yeah, the boot list. I was texting Phil this earlier. For some reason I thought that the season was relatively spoiled, which I hope it's not. And if it is, don't contact me. But I filled out the boot list and they're already a mess. So that's a good thing. I like that everyone's boot lists were all over the place.
Just looking at the chat, here's a fun thing. They didn't mention the Final Four twist.
Probably, I mean, they probably mentioned it to the players, but just not to us.
But I'm surprised they wouldn't show the players knowing that. And just as a reminder to the fans saying, and just like in season 35, we're going to have a Final Four fire making challenge, which will make all the players go, what? But it will make everybody else be like, oh yeah, that's what's going to happen.
Yeah, that's a good point. At first when I first said that, I was like, I don't really care to know because I already know that. But also considering how much backlash there was, you would think they would want to be like, alert, this is a thing. I'm
surprised they didn't show it. Because we're just assuming it, but I wonder if my parents sat down and watched it and were like, what Final Four twist? They didn't mention it. And what
actually, my parents didn't watch. My parents didn't watch last season, and so they're going to be like, "What the heck is going on at the Final Four this season?"
Yeah.
Yeah, good point. Didn't even think of that.
I'm surprised they didn't bring it up. That's really weird.
Yeah, right? Yeah, I saw something else that was kind of funny.
Okay, well, that's now in my head. I'm really surprised they didn't do that.
Yeah, that's going to be an issue.
Well, I know this is the really late one because we have to do the 2-hour podcast, but who's your MVP, LVP? Because guys, it's back. You guys have to vote for that.
Oh yeah. Okay. So for all of our new viewers, because I feel like we've had a spike in subscriptions and viewership, we do MVP, LVP. So if you watch our last video, Phil, Vaughn, and I drafted our fantasy teams, and you guys will vote for the MVP of the episode and the LVP of the episode. The LVP cannot be the person who went home. The LVP has to still be in the game. So MVP, whoever has the MVP on their team, they get 3 points. Whoever has LVP, they lose 2 points. For me, I have to give Donathan the MVP. One, because like my team needs a little bit of salvaging, but also he had a really good growth, and this was just in first episode. He very well could have gone home at that first tribal council, has his big quotes on hero moment, and then goes to Ghost Island, and we learn a lot about Donathan this episode. So to me, he's an easy MVP. There's a couple other people who I think would also be perfect for it. LVP, I gotta look at this again. Here, you give me your MVP LVP is Chris.
That's Joe Menace team. I think he has something to say about that.
Sorry, Joe.
My MVP, I mean, my team didn't really do too much tonight. So I would probably just go with Brendan, because this is more of an editing thing. They showed him being perceptive. They showed him in the leadership role. He's being very supportive of everybody on his tribe. His confessional was like, I'm going to do everything to help this team. You know, he doesn't pull the plug on Laurel, and they end up winning big because of it, because he's just confident enough to not do anything. He's, huge with Donathan there towards the end when Donathan's trying to dive in. He was shown as like smelling out that, dude, I think they're trying to pull one on us, when nobody else was really thinking that. I mean, I do think Stephanie Johnson's MVP, so it's really hard to make an argument here. But
yeah, I was going to say Team Vaughn has Dominic and Stephanie Johnson, so realistically, Team Vaughn should get the MVP. But I like both of our picks. I think I think Donathan's MVP. I think Brendan, you could definitely make an argument for it. But yeah, I got to give the LVP to Chris, because he was put in a leadership position and couldn't capitalize on it, and then just found a way to make everyone except for the only other person from Florida mad at him.
Yeah, exactly. And tweeted us and said that Chris has a gigantic billboard in Times Square. I swear, I think I've seen that.
I gotta go see that. I was just in Times Square last weekend. I guess I wasn't looking.
There's a couple billboards in Times Square, huh? Just a few.
I don't want to go to Times Square, but I will do it for the photo.
There you go.
Yeah.
For the selfie.
Stay tuned, everybody.
So everybody, you vote on this video, and you can tweet at us, really put it on Facebook. We don't care where you put MVP, LVP. It's not like the bootless game. Just put it wherever you want. And we'll add them up and tally it. And whoever gets the most votes for Sunday, they get the 3-point boost. And if Joe gets the MVP, he gets 6. So we're doubling everything for Joe. So that means if Chris is LVP, he also loses 4, not 2. I mean, It's just fair.
It's only fair, yeah.
Right now, after this week, Joe is still in last place, even though both his people are still in, and he got double point. I'm just saying. Just saying. Just going to keep rubbing this in.
Uphill battle for you, Joe. Oh, real quick, what do you think about the previews? We have a swap next week. Do you think two tribes? Do you think three tribes? What's your take on that?
I hope it's 3.
Mm-hmm.
I hope it's 3. There were 2 mats there, so I'm thinking it's 2. And I think that 2 makes it easier for actually sending somebody to exile or to Ghost Island and not completely screwing a tribe, because it's like, oh, now you're down to 5 people and you need to vote out this person. I think that they're going to go to 2 again, but I wish it was 3, because tonight is the reason why 20-person seasons always seem to get off the slow starts. Even when they have really good premieres, such as Redemption Island, great premiere, but it still felt like after that, it slows down because you only knew Philip and Boston Rob and Russell. Like, we didn't know anybody on Russell's tribe aside from that. And I almost feel like that's like Naviti and Samoa. I mean, look at Galoo. Like, who's on Galoo? I don't know. Somehow 2 people from that tribe have come back and played again. How? 3 people from that tribe have come back.
Somehow we never get to know the people who are on Russell's tribes.
Like 3 people from Galoo is the other. 3 people from Galoo, the most under-edited tribe of all time, have played twice.
No, that's what I'm saying. Like, both of Russell's original tribes. Like, what? Or like his Redemption Island tribe and his Galoo tribe. It's like, who was on his tribes? Galoo
wasn't his tribe, though. Galoo was the other Russell.
Oh, Galoo's on the other tribe. Excuse me.
Yeah, Galoo was purple.
Other Russell.
So, but what I'm saying is, like, you somehow get 3 people from that tribe, and I almost feel like Naviti could easily go the Galoo way, where it's like, maybe Bradley's a great personality. Are we going to get as much as we got from like Dave Ball? Are we going to get as much as we got from like Eric? Like we barely got stuff from those guys because it was so heavily edited in favor of one way. And when you have one tribe lose both challenges and you also have to get to 10 people on another tribe, it's really hard because how much time do you really want to spend with that other tribe? And you had to give a lot to Dominic because he finds an idol and he's confronting Chris, and Chris and him were instantly at each other's throats. That's your storyline for that tribe in episode 1, and that leaves out everyone.
Well, yeah, but that's the thing. I guess if I'm going to play devil's advocate on how it's Naviti, now we know how the Naviti tribe is, like how it's broken out. That's all we saw. I can't imagine there was anything else, any other drama or anything else that was more interesting or more necessary than that. I obviously would have preferred to hear from Chelsea or Angela or Kellen Moore or Desiree especially. I would have preferred to hear from a lot of them. But if that's the only thing that was necessary for the story a couple weeks from now, I'm kind of okay with it.
I just want to say, though, but what I was going to say, though, sorry, is when it's 10, though, on 2 tribes, you only have so much room for so many storylines. Whereas if you have 3 tribes of 6, you're going to have a storyline on each tribe and everybody can kind of be a part of it because it's such a small tribe. By doing the 2 tribes to start, yeah, that might be the only storyline necessary for further on, but you're eliminating a third storyline automatically by eliminating another tribe. And when it's smaller, everybody's kind of involved in the same thing. Whereas this one, there were 3 or 4 people who were involved in it. Yeah.
And that's what I was going to end with. Like if Desiree or Chelsea or Angela goes home next week, I'm going to be like, okay, I wish I had saw more of them. I'd seen more of them. Yes. Last week. But another thing is if we go to only 2 tribes, we're only losing 1 person per tribe. It's still 9-person tribes, which is, it's like one number away from 10. It's still a lot of people. It's a lot of new relationships to develop now. It's still very heavy, at least with 3 tribes. What I loved about Heroes, Healers, Hustlers is that it was always 3 tribes. So it was always tight tribe dynamics.
Yeah, exactly. And I wish they would go to 3 tribes, but I just don't see them doing it. I think it would just be too much for them to go to 3. Especially when they're going to be sending 1 person every time. I don't think they want to have.
Good point. They're probably only going to have 2 with that.
I don't think they want 5 people like on a tribe, and then maybe 4, and then maybe 3. And I guess you would have to. The winning tribe would have to pick somebody from the losing tribe to go every time.
Yeah,
I don't think that.
And then we have a Matt Singh situation on our hands.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's a good point. I didn't think of that. It's probably going to be 2, in which case, I hope they at least exchange blows, so it's not just what we saw tonight.
Yeah. We all survived the eliminator game, Vaughn, you and I. I should have went with Chris. That was my gut pick, but instead I went with Libby. She didn't even speak.
Yeah, because now you can't. And Chris, you don't want to touch Chris.
I can't touch Chris next week. Yeah. There needs to be something where I know that the tribe he's on ends up with immunity. I need that back at camp. That'll make me feel safe.
Or actually, you know what? They'll probably have a preview for it. They'll probably have a new preview on Sunday, which will have him and a buff because they've been doing that quite a bit, and it's pretty ridiculous.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just happy I made it through the first, 1 round of the eliminator game. That's a big
move for you.
Yeah. Also for new viewers, the eliminator game, it's just kind of this game, just Phil, Vaughn and I play, where we just pick 1 person each week who we say isn't going to go home. You can't repeat people. It's kind of like a suicide pool in NFL? Is that what you usually compare it to? Yeah. And I'm notoriously horrible at it. And Phil and Vaughn usually duke it out, and then Vaughn wins.
That's exactly what happens pretty much every single time.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. Another thing here, we had Survivor Patty asking how much rice did Donathan get? Did you notice he seemed like he had just as much rice as everybody else had?
He had a big pot. I wonder if that was for just him or just a Ghost Island reserve, and he was screwing over the next person who's going to stay.
Right. There was so much rice in there.
I know. That was awesome.
That was crazy. He had so much. I was surprised. For a season where it seems like they're not going to give out much, he had loads.
Yeah. Oh, and I was a little disappointed because another thing in that first challenge, Jeff is you get a fire making kit or 20 eggs or flint or fishing or all of these things. And then we never really got to see anyone put them to use, especially the Malolo tribe. They're the ones who won this whole shelter building kit, and then we just see them lose the rest of the time. I would have liked to see some of that stuff, because if they're going to make a whole stink about all these weird different switches and rewards you can get, at least show me the reward.
Well, and that was, we saw Wendell building his crab trap, which was interesting.
That was very impressive. Furniture builder right there.
The furniture builder, that was really cool. But yeah, I see what you're saying, and I think that's why, once again, when it's the smaller tribes, that's something you can focus on because everybody's doing it, whereas this was more focused on them running around looking for idols. I mean, Jacob eating up so much screen time as somebody who's looking for idols and not being trusted by his tribe. I mean, that was the big thing. So I don't know. I mean, it's always tough with these huge starts. With 20 tribe starts, I mean, or 20-person starts, it's really, really hard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is tough. I also just saw I'm just kind of scrolling through our mentions. Donathan got subtitled at the beginning, which I thought was very funny.
I thought that was funny too. Like,
and very much appreciated it too.
There was some of it though. I was like, that's pretty obvious. That's what he's saying. But yeah, he's getting subtitled a lot this year. It's like when Ralph was on the season, they subtitled him every single time he spoke.
Because I've heard, I guess I've heard like Southern accents, but I guess I've never heard an Eastern Kentucky accent. But once I got it, like once I figured it out, I could kind of understand what he was saying. But yeah, at the beginning, I was like, oh no, I don't know what's coming out of his mouth.
Yeah, he's it's a very, very strong accent. I mean, it's very heavy. I love how we're all just so accustomed to the Dominic Long Island accent, but
I know I didn't even hear his accent until my mom was like, he's such a New Yorker. I was like, oh right, he is.
Yeah, that's right. You're just surrounded by it all the time, so you don't feel
it's just freaking awful.
What else is there anything else? Like, I mean, I'm sure we can start doing like comments and stuff like later episodes. Maybe not tonight, just because it's 2 a.m. for you. Do you want to go to bed?
2 a.m. Yeah, I guess I do. I'm actually surprised. I feel like there's so much to talk about, but I actually think we did a pretty good job breaking it down, even though we jumped all over the place.
I think we talked about it fast, you know?
Yeah. For our new viewers, we are always this excited, and we always talk this fast, but we try to keep a chronological order of what happened. But yeah, I guess I could wrap it up because it is 2:03 a.m. and I got a meeting tomorrow morning. Okay, I haven't done this one in a while. It's been a couple months. So comment on this video with who you think is the MVP and who you think is the LVP of this episode. This is going to count for both episodes, right?
Yeah.
And then on Saturday, we'll post the updated standings with our bid list and the prop bet. We do that once a week. For prop bet scoring, we are counting this as one episode, even though it's technically 2. Next week will be episode 3, but just for a prop bet, this will be number 1. So in the meantime, tweet at us, post on Facebook, email us, preferably comment on this video with who you think should be MVP, who you think should be LVP. I'm going to write a spotlight of who you vote as the MVP. I'll post that sometime this weekend. Last season, Phil posted this thing called the Phil 5. Is he going to be doing that again?
I'm going to be doing it. I'm not doing it tonight, though. I'll do something for the premiere, but like I have like a lot of knee-jerk reactions. It's 11 and I'm going to go to bed. I'm sorry.
I 100% feel that. Yeah. So another thing is Phil usually writes a little 5 bullet point right.
It's pretty much nonsense. So
it's a bunch of nonsense right after the episode. And then I'll do an MVP spotlight on Sunday just so we can keep getting you guys content. But in the meantime, follow us at Survivor Specialist. We are jumping up in Twitter followers. I don't know what's happening, but I'm really liking it. We're at like 3,050 YouTube subscribers. That's jumped up in the past 2 weeks. Hit that subscribe button, hit that follow button, like us on Facebook, tell your friends, tell your moms, tell your dads, listen to us on iTunes, give us 5 stars, and we will be back probably Sunday afternoon. We're going to be live before the Oscars. Because all Phil and I do is watch TV. Sometime before Sunday, we'll give you an actual time with that, and then we have a couple good surprises for you guys coming up for our predictions and power rankings podcast. So stay tuned for those.
Yeah, for sure. That'll be fun. Finally, maybe giving you guys something more than just the same boring nonsense. So
with
that, look forward to Sunday in our, we'll tweet out the time. But for all you movie buffs, it will be before the Oscars. So see you then.